The Rick Mercer Report is back tonight on CBC. The host of the show, Rick Mercer, joins us on the show. How was your holidays, Rick?
They were great. I got back to Newfoundland, which is where I'm from. There was a little dusting of snow. It all looked good. Yeah, it was great.
You know, back in 2003, the award-winning Rick Mercer Report debuted on CBC. It's still going strong 8 years later. Tell us how RMR began.
It began, like so many shows, with like a contract to do probably 6 or 7 episodes. It wasn't a full year contract by any stretch, and it was in the back end. I believe I started up in January. I didn't start up at the beginning of the season, and it was something I was working towards for a long time. Every time, no matter what show I was working on, be it This Hour's 22 Minutes or Talking to Americans Made in Canada, I always wanted my own show, I guess, not in the same way that I guess a cook wants to open his own restaurant. And I wanted to do all the things that I do on the show. I wanted to travel around the country, show off one part of the country to another part of the country. I wanted to be able to do comedy. I wanted to be able to do commentary, cover politics, but yet just have silly fun. And that's the way the show evolved, and, people are watching. I think more people are watching now than probably were in that first season.
Now, Rick, the Mercer Report on CBC is billed between, The Daily Show with Jon Stewart and This Hour has 22 minutes. The show's pretty popular.
I always had an inkling that I had a shot because I'd been in the business long enough that I knew that I would just do things that I'm probably pretty good at or I get away with. And I knew that there was an inherent desire to see the country. For all the years that I did 22 Minutes, I always wanted to go to Nunavut and shoot a segment for the show. And there was always a reason why I couldn't go. It was too expensive, or the weather was dodgy, or people thought, like, who wants to see Nunavut? And then when I got my own show, I didn't know how long it would last. So the very first episode of the show was about me in Nunavut. And that kind of confused some people because we come to Toronto to do the show, and people were like, well, Toronto's where everyone lives. Why don't you do a Toronto segment? And I was like, no, I'm going to go as far away from Toronto as I can get. I'm going to Nunavut. And that's what we did, and I think it rang true to people.
Many popular segments on Rick Mercer Report. I think one of the best ones that I've seen was when you spent the night with the former Prime Minister and his family. How did that work out?
That was odd because, Stephen Harper, that was the Prime Minister. I mean, he's never known for making time for the media. He kind of hated the media, but somehow his people convinced him that it was a good idea. And then once he agreed to do it, I think he got it. And that was very early. Those are the early days of him being minister. And he really hadn't fully developed his hatred towards the media. So he actually looked very good. I think that he probably looked as good doing that as anything he did in the next 9 years. And so it was just a fluke, I guess. Anytime, I think it's my responsibility anytime someone comes on my show, whether they're a fisherman or a farmer or a prime minister or a rock star, that they look good. I mean, that's part of my mandate, my personal mandate. I don't ever want people, no matter who they are, walking away feeling like they were hard done by, and so that's what I did.
At 5:20 this afternoon, we're going to air the Rants. Now, tonight's rant, which can be seen on your show, tell us about the rant and how it started.
Well, the rant's something that I've always done. When I used to do a commentary on a TV show called Midday on the CBC many, many years ago. And when This Hour's 22 Minutes started, again, it was a 6-contract episode, and we didn't know what that show was. It was going to be created by the cast, so it was myself and Mary Walsh and Kathy Jones and Greg Toomey, and we had to create a brand new show. And there was very little money, which is actually why the show evolved to what you see today, because it was a very affordable show. But we didn't know whether there would be any more work, and in fact there was no mechanism for the show to carry on. So I thought, well, whatever we do in this show in terms of sketches or news, parodies or whatever, I'm going to do a commentary, because then when it's all over and we're canceled or whatever, at least I'll be able to have these commentaries and show people what I can do. And then that would be like my mini pilot inside of it. Now, the show became a huge success. I ended up doing it for 8 years, and as a result, I did a rant in every episode for 8 years, and I've done a rant in every episode of the Mercer Report now in its 13th year.
You've won over 25 Gemini Awards for your work on TV over the years. How nice is it, Rick, to be recognized from the TV industry for your commitment to Canadian television?
That's always a fun night, and it means a lot. It's totally, I mean, winning an award is is wonderful. Of course, it's nice. The way I look at it, and this is not me being like, oh, is that, the perception is that it's a one-man show because it's the Rick Mercer show, starring Rick Mercer and nobody else. But, there's writers on this show that I've worked with for 25 years. There's part of the creative team that I've worked with for 25 years. There's an entire team of people, obviously, who work really hard every week to get the show up. So anytime the show is recognized, I see it as much as a recognition of the team that we put together. Not just like an award for me. Because my name's on the show, I'm often the guy who goes and accepts it. But it's great. It means we're still relevant. Now, back in the day when we started out, I remember the first time that This Hour's 22 Minutes received an award. It was probably the greatest night of my life. Nothing's really quite matched that since, but it's very nice when your colleagues give you a heads up. I like it.
Now, This Hour's 22 Minutes was huge for you. You did many characters over the years. Who was your favorite to play?
It was, I always loved doing the Quinlan Quince. It was the only time that the four of us actually got to act together at once. And so that was always a big thrill for me. And my comedy buddy was Greg Toomey, who, of course, is back on 22 Minutes now, and you can see him there. And we did a lot of characters together he's just one of the funniest men I've ever worked with, and he makes me laugh unlike anyone else. So I miss that. Being in a one-man show, I get to work with some great actors. Toomey just made me laugh all night.
The Mercer Report tonight on CBC. Rick Mercer, always great having you on the show, Rick.
Thank you so much. I hope people tune in. It's a fun show from sea to sea, New Brunswick and British Columbia.